Hey everybody, welcome back to Pathways to Wealth. In this episode, you know what time it is. It's Book Review Friday, where every Friday I bring you a book review and summary of a message that I think can help you create more income, build more true wealth, and upgrade an area of your life. And this week we have an excellent book. It's The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And this book is based on Stoic philosophy. And Stoicism, to me, is just a really practical way to view the world and to live your life. And there are some really incredible messages in this book. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. All right, so as usual, we start with the main theme of the book, which is the 30,000-foot overview and kind of the most important messages that you can pull from this book, which the first thing, and I love the way that this is put, what stands in the way becomes the way. So instead of looking at your obstacles as things that are going to keep you from getting what you want or keep you from succeeding, obstacles are quite literally the very thing that can help you succeed, or the path to success. And one thing that I love about how Ryan puts this is, he says we can't control what happens to us, but what we can control is how we perceive and respond to what happens to us, right? In the world, there's all these external forces. There's all these things happening. There's health issues. There's political issues. There's war. There's crime. There's, financial issues. A lot of these things, we can't control what comes at us on a day-to-day basis, right? But what we can control is how our perception of those things and how we respond to those things. And there are three keys or three steps to really living this philosophy of the obstacle is the way. The first is perception, right? How we perceive what happens to us. The second is action, what we do and how we respond. And then number three is will, being able to persevere and also understand what we can't change. So let's go ahead and dive into each of these keys one by one. So key takeaway number one is to see the opportunity in obstacles. So our perception, kind of defining what perception is really how we decide what things mean to us. So say you're walking down the street and somebody is walking the other way and they spit in front of you. It seems kind of weird, right? But you can perceive that as a threat or as an insult, or you could perceive that as, well, that person, something's either wrong with them or they just had like a weird taste in their mouth or whatever, right? It's how we perceive things that come at us. Or say somebody cuts us off. We might look at that, in traffic, somebody pulls out in front of us. We might look at that as somebody being an idiot and get angry and honk on the horn. Or that person their mind might be somewhere else. Maybe they have a sick family member or they just got laid off, right? So how we perceive the things that happen to us really, really matters. And I think if everybody kind of took a second to think about their perception of the world would be a lot nicer of a place. And one example of this that I love in the book is looking at the idea of market panics as an opportunity. So where a lot of people look at like the housing crisis of the early 2000s or the financial crisis of 2008, where the mass majority of people looked at those things as really bad, scary times, you had people that became millionaires and billionaires because they saw the opportunity in that. And that's what I try to educate my traders and investors all the time is like, look, guys, panic and fear is a huge opportunity in the markets. That's true with stocks, with futures, with Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, with the housing crisis, where there is fear and where the perceived reality is really bad, that's where there's oftentimes a lot of opportunity. So instead of getting caught up in herd thinking, really anytime something bad in the world happens, look at opportunity, right? Where's the opportunity? And seeking opportunity in disaster takes discipline and patience, right? It's not something that just comes natural for a lot of people because we are like a herd species. We like to follow the herd. That's why, when somebody yawns and you look at somebody that yawns, a lot of people yawn. Or when somebody starts clapping at a show, everybody usually starts clapping. And when one person stands up, everybody kind of follows, right? So it takes discipline and it takes patience to instill the habit of looking at obstacles and disaster as opportunity. But that's where everything starts. So in the book, Ryan lays out really a process for how to do this, right? You might be saying, well, Chris, that sounds great. Yeah, I want to look at opportunity, but how do you do that? So the first step is to be objective, right? To step back and to really think about the way that things really are. Control your emotions, right? Don't freak out. Don't let fear and anxiety overcome you. See the good in whatever situation there is. So, for example, if you're a real estate investor, if you're interested in investing in real estate and rates go up and prices crash, when the news and the media is really negative, you could look at that as a great opportunity. You say, well, great, prices are lower. And it's amazing how hindsight is 20/20, right? Everybody likes to look back in history and say, oh, I woulda, coulda, shoulda bought more property. Or, man, if I only bought stocks in 2009 when they were at the lowest point, right? It takes discipline and it takes patience to see the good in bad situations, or what is perceived by most as bad situations. Steady your nerves. Okay, that's the next step. Steady your nerves. Ignore what limits others. So I love this. Where most people are limited in their perception, that's where I always like to ask the question, why is everybody else wrong, right? Why could other people be wrong about a current situation, right? If people are fearful of traveling, for instance, why are they wrong, right? If people are just so caught up with terrorism that they're afraid to leave their house, let alone leave the country, right? Why could that be an irrational fear, right? Look at what's limiting others and kind of ignore it, or at least ask why they could be wrong. Put things into perspective. Revert to the now. Think about what you can control and what's happening in this moment. Because again, the past and the future are really just cognitive dreams, right? If you think about it, the only thing that's actually real is what's happening right now. So revert to the now and focus on what can be controlled. Don't worry about all this extra stimuli and all this noise that's happening in the world. Think about what is in your bubble of control. And that is a great place to start to see the opportunity in obstacles. Now, I love this quote from the book. Ryan says, there's no good or bad without us. There's only perception, right? Things are the way that things are in the world, right? A car crash in and of itself is not a bad or a good thing. It's whatever label we give it, right? It's 99% of the time, it's probably a terrible experience for the person or people involved in the crash, right? But it's because of the perception and the label that we give to it. So the quote continues, there is the event itself and the story that we tell ourselves about what it means. Such a powerful quote. I'll say it again. There's no good or bad without us, right? There's only perception. There's the event that happens. There's the event over here itself. And then there's the story and the meaning that we give to that event. So let's look at the thought process when it comes to seeing opportunity and really changing your perspective. Okay, step one is to really think about the fact that there's always another move. If you feel like something bad happens, right? Let's say you lose your job and you sit there and you wallow in your self-pity and you say, well, I don't know. I got fired. I'm screwed. I'm going to go broke. I'm going to starve to death and I'm going to end up homeless and on the side of the road, right? That's one way to look and perceive that. Another way is to say, wow, what an awesome opportunity. Now that I was fired from a job that I probably wasn't fulfilled in to begin with, now I can move on and actually do something that I'm really happy about, right? And I'll tell you a personal story. That happened to me in my early 20s where when I saw the writing on the wall in the mortgage industry, where, the credit bubble was looking really, really ugly. And I just really hated corporate America. I hated dealing with debt all day. I wanted to deal with wealth. I wanted to deal with income. I didn't want to talk to people about debt and payments and can they afford a house, right? So many people in the early 2000s were just getting overextended and buying stuff they couldn't afford, and it was really draining on me. So when I left that, I could have been depressed and said, well, crap, now I don't have any income. I don't know what I'm going to do. But instead, my perception of that was great. Now I have an extra 8 to 10 hours a day to work on something that is, really fulfilling. And within the span of a year or two, generated my first 7-figure income, started investing and building different businesses, and just living with a passion that I hadn't felt in a long, long time. So again, no matter what happens, keep in mind that there's always another move. And tell yourself, there's no reason to get upset. If you allow emotion and anxiety to overtake you, which is really easy to do. And, I'm like a really strong-willed type A personality who has struggled with anxiety in my life. I can tell you how important it is to just look at things and perceive them as opportunities instead of just letting emotion take over. Tell yourself, nobody said it would be easy, and yes, the stakes are high, but the path is there if you want it. I think this is just a really practical, objective way to look at things. Understand there's always a different move. Don't get upset. Life is not supposed to be easy. Accept a challenge and move on, right? Just a really good way to look at life. And one thing that Ryan says in the book is look at the reality of your situation, steady your nerves, and throw your best at it, right? That's really all we can do is look at the situation as it is right now, understand it, remove yourself from it emotionally, steady your nerves, breathe, and then attack it, right? Give it all you got. Control emotion and panic, and realize that freaking out doesn't add anything constructive. There is a TED Talk by Captain Chris Hadfield. It's a great talk about fear, and Ryan talks about this in the book about how NASA prepares its astronauts for space. And they say the one thing that you never do is panic. Never panic, because that's when shit goes really wrong, right? And what they do is they prepare. They look at every single bad scenario under the sun that could happen, every single thing that possibly could go wrong, and they practice it, right? And then when something does go wrong in space, which it usually does, they control themselves, they don't panic, they don't let their emotions get the best of them, and they understand it. They look at it objectively. And in Chris Hadfield's talk, he talks about how he actually went blind. He was on the space station working out in space, and he just went blind, and he didn't know what happened, but I guess they had practiced that, and all it was water was collecting in his eyes, and he was eventually able to get it out. But had he panicked, he might have died floating in space. Terrible way to go, right? And this hits home for me because there have been times in my life where, I've either been in a really dangerous situation traveling around the world. Maybe I was stuck in the mountains somewhere, which has happened a couple of times, where if I had panicked, probably would have died. And I think that in the business world or in trading or in investing or in entrepreneurship, those same emotions can come out. And we can go down that rabbit hole, which is really, really dangerous. So I think it's worth taking a couple minutes here just to talk about the idea of controlling emotion and not panicking. Okay, so one thing that Ryan talks about in the book is how it's really important to focus on what you can change, okay? And he gives a list of several great things that you can always control or always change. There's infinite amount of things that we can't change, but here's just a quick list of things that we can. Your emotions, right? You can control how you react. Your perspective, right? How you perceive obstacles. Your creativity, how you think about obstacles and how you get creative to use those to your advantage. Your attitude, your desires, your decisions, right? You can't manage or change what somebody does, right? Say you have an employee or a business partner that steals from you, which I've had happen. You can't change what that person does, right? They're just looking out for number one, themselves, right? What you can change is the decisions and the desires and the actions that you take in dealing with that person, right? And then the final thing is perseverance, right? You can always make a decision and you can always change if you're going to keep moving and persevere or if you're going to give up. And that leads us to key takeaway number 2, which is act with boldness and persistence, okay? So again, just kind of reinforce this message. It doesn't matter what happens to you, but what does matter is what you do with what happens to you, right? Again, it doesn't matter what people do, what the world does, what gets thrown at you. What does matter is what you actually do, how you respond to that. So there's a funny quote in the book. Ryan says, a lot of people have turned shit into sugar, right? They've turned really bad situations, or what is perceived by most people as really bad situations, into great things, right? Another way of saying that is, turn lemons into lemonade, right? Situations suck sometimes, right? Sometimes you're in situations that really are hard to kind of fake yourself into believing are good things. But what are you going to do about it, right? Are you going to sit there and wallow in your self-pity, or are you going to take action and be bold and stick to it and be persistent? So this starts by deciding that quitting is not an option, okay? And it's really easy to give up, right? People quit so many times right before they're about to break through, right before they're about to succeed. And I think a really strong mindset to have, and Ryan goes into a lot of depth of this in the book, is never be in a hurry, never be worried, never be desperate, and never stop short. Really powerful message there. He also talks about the ability to persist and resist. So the ability to persist through challenges and the ability to resist the desire to give up, right? To resist giving everything away that you've worked so hard for. So there's 3 kind of points here when it talks about persistence. It's okay to get discouraged. There are going to be times where things happen and your natural reaction is like, oh man, that sucks. And that's okay. That's human. It's supposed to be hard. If life were easy, if becoming a multimillionaire was easy, if traveling the world was easy, everybody would do it and it would not feel like a reward, right? But what is not okay is it's not okay to give up, okay? So if you find yourself becoming discouraged, accept that and move on, right? Be okay with that. And tell yourself, like, look, life is supposed to be hard. This is a challenge. It's more interesting that way. But what's not okay is it's not okay to give up. And that kind of leads to the next point, which is, you're not always going to succeed. And in the book, Ryan talks about, how a lot of startups fail. Like 9 out of 10 businesses and 9 out of 10 startups fail. And there's many examples and stories in this book, but you don't want to look at failure as a bad thing. Embrace it and look at it as feedback. If something doesn't work, that's okay. Not everything that you do in business or in trading or in investing is going to work. That's just part of the game. If you were going to win every single business interaction or every single investment or every single trade, it wouldn't be worth doing, right? And in fact, all it takes to get wealthy is one time, right? You can fail at 15 businesses, but if you hit one and it works, there you go. That's all it takes. Same thing with investing. As long as you control your risk and control the downside and don't blow up, there's always going to be another opportunity. And that leads us to the next point, which I think is just really brilliant. There are a few traits of really great entrepreneurs and investors. And I actually want to tie this directly to trading because this, I've talked about this process for close to a decade now. And it's really, this can help you look at money and investing objectively. So the first thing is a successful and high-performing entrepreneur and trader or investor never marries a position, meaning whenever you look at a business opportunity or an investment or a trade, never look at it and say, this has to work. This, I'm married to it. This idea is the only possible solution. And if this doesn't work, the world's going to come to an end, right? The second thing is, don't be afraid to lose money, right? If you're afraid to lose money, you're not going to make a lot of money because you have to be willing to part with money to pay for an education, right? In the markets, I talk about this concept of paying the market tuition, right? You have to pay to play, and you're probably not, if you're going to trade the stock market or any financial market, you're not going to come out winning off of the bat. You're going to have to learn through experience, right? Never get bitter or embarrassed, and they never end up out of the game permanently. So as long as you don't blow up, and as long as you don't let your emotions get the best of you, and you're not afraid to lose money, you're going to be okay, right? And the idea is just not to marry any position or any business. You know, persevere and don't give up, but realize when it's time to pivot. So the next point here is to focus on the process of finishing and performing at the best of your ability. And in the book, he gives some sports examples. And one thing that I really like is, and our coaches used to tell us this in hockey, it doesn't matter if you're playing the best team in the league or the worst team in the league. The only thing that matters is what you can control, which is how you perform. And if you go out on the ice and you perform the best you can, right? If you check the hardest, if you skate the fastest, if you shoot the most accurate, if you pass the best, you're more likely to succeed than just worrying about beating the opponent, right? If you focus on the process of skill development, on the process of executing at the highest level that you can, the odds of you succeeding are way better than just looking at this other person and saying, I want to kick his ass or I want to beat her, right? That's not the way to win in the long run. The way to win in the long run is focusing on the process of finishing and doing your best, okay? And then the final point here in key number 2 is to use your obstacle's weaknesses against the obstacle, right? So analyze what your obstacle is. It might be a person, it might be a situation. Look for the edge, look for the advantage, look for a way to use the weaknesses of that situation against it and in your favor. And that leads us to key takeaway number 3, which is use your willpower to accept. Oh, let me start that over. So that leads us to key takeaway number 3, which is to use your willpower to either change or accept what you can't change. So your will means your internal power, what you have when nothing else is working, right? It's the stubborn hard-headedness, perseverance that you have when nothing else is working. And this is what you need to take on big tasks without giving into hopelessness. And he gives a great story in the book of Abraham Lincoln dealing with slavery and the hopelessness and depression that he experienced and how just his will got him through that. And I love this quote. He says, sometimes a clear head and action aren't enough, right? Sometimes looking at things objectively and taking a lot of action aren't enough. Sometimes we need to focus on a greater purpose and the ability to handle it with firmness. So one thing that we can always do, so there's 4 things that we can always do. We can prepare for difficult times. We can accept what we can't change. We can manage our expectations, and we can persevere, right? This is really what the will is all about. And I love the movie Iron Will, where it's about the guy that is dog sledding the race, and he was like, the youngest kid, underdog, and through his will, through his perseverance, he was able to overcome great adversity and like pretty much near certain death, right? So whenever you look at your will, one thing you can do is prepare for difficult times. I like to do this, and I think the Chinese are really good at this. They have like a pessimistic view of the world where they say, look, if we're prospering now, we're going to stack things away for when things get bad because life is all about highs and lows, right? And that's why the Chinese are savers, right? They save a lot of money because they know that, prosperous times, it's not like a straight line up, right? And there have been several times in my life where I've had a lot of money, where I've had a little bit of money, and everything in between. And if you let your self-confidence kind of ride on where your money's at, it's going to be a really rocky road. So one thing that I like to do, and one thing that I love that Ryan talks about, is how you can prepare for difficult times and then move forward to accept the things that you can't change, manage your expectations, and persevere. That's what the will is really all about, is looking at things objectively and then just moving forward the best way that you can. And then there's two more concepts that I want to talk about with key number 3, using your will. And that's the fact that success is 99% habit and only 1% talent. And there's this whole concept that I think a lot of people are really starting to understand, that talent is overrated. Willpower and habit is most of what matters when it comes to succeeding. You know, sure, in certain businesses or certain skill sets, you know, if you're a 4-foot tall basketball player, you're probably not going to play in the NBA. But when it comes to most things, talent is overrated and success is really about habit and perseverance. And then the final point here is amor fati. I think I'm saying that right. And that basically means to love everything that happens to you. You know, accept whatever is outside of your control and love everything that comes your way. Love everything that happens to you, because why not? Right? You can either look at things in a negative light, right, through your perception, or no matter what happens to you, you can choose to love it. And life is just a lot easier when you develop that habit, when you practice that, right? And it's not something that is like this metaphysical, like feel good, like love everybody. It's a very practical, objective way to look at things that come at you, right? You can choose to get angry at that bad driver. Or you can choose to say, you know what? That person is probably having a bad day or worried about something and they weren't paying attention. They pulled out in front of me. I love them. I love that situation, right? Why not? You can choose. And I think life is just better if you choose love over fear, anxiety, depression, and on and on and on. So a couple of final thoughts on this great book. You know, again, I think this is a book that is absolutely worth a deep dive. If you watch the episode where I talk about how to read books in 20% of the time, part of that is skipping books that aren't worth reading front to back. This is absolutely one that is worth really digesting and internalizing the stories, because it really can change your life. And I don't say that about many books. There's a lot of books that are really good technical books that'll teach you certain things, how to make money in certain ways, or practical ways to save or invest. This is just a really good book to live your life by, no matter what your religion is. You know, again, this isn't religious. This is just philosophy that I think can apply to being a good human being. So, final thought number 1 is success starts with your perception of obstacles. You know, look at the path, look at the obstacle as the way, not as the thing that's in your way. Persistent action in the face of adversity matters. If you just look at all the bad things that are happening to you as good things, and you choose to perceive them great, but you don't do anything, kind of like the movie or the book The Secret, where, hey, if you just think rich, you're going to get rich. Everybody knows that's bullshit. It comes down to actions, right? It comes down to persistent action and not giving up. And the final thing is use your will to discern the difference between what you can and cannot change. And the final thing, and then use your will to discern what you can and cannot change. And again, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. Excellent book by Ryan Holiday. Go ahead and grab it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the future episodes and videos. And also, you can click right here to visit the show notes and resources page, where we have just a ton of resources, a ton of notes, and further reading and further stuff that you guys can dive into with these Pathways to Wealth episodes. So I hope you enjoyed this book review, and let me know what you guys are doing to change your perspective. You know, what are you working on? How are you taking action? How are you using your will, and what situations have you persevered through? Reach out, leave me a comment, shoot me an email, send me a tweet. I'm at Chris Dunn TV everywhere on social media, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.